Before we dive in, if you enjoy these first-person zombie apocalypse stories, hit like and subscribe to never miss a drop of dread. And let me know in the comments where in the world are you listening from tonight. I read everyone, and it's wild seeing how far these tales travel. Now let's get into it. I told him to stay put. Told him I'd be back before sunset. But the thing about promises is they don't mean much out here anymore. The radio crackled against my chest. I tapped it once, twice, finally it caught. "Eli, you still breathing?" His voice came through, tight and shaky. "Yep, barely." I could hear him trying to stay calm, trying to make me believe it, but I knew that tone. I'd used it myself 100 times since the world went to hell. "I had to loop around," I whispered. "Took longer than I thought, but I'm coming back. Just hang on, all right? You don't move. You don't make a sound." I listened. Nothing. No footsteps. No screams. Then a click. My stomach sank. He'd cut the radio. A choice only a smart kid makes. A scared kid. I picked up the pace, moving low along the alley behind the corner store, every nerve in my body on fire. Then glass shattered. A scream. His scream. I didn't think. I just ran. 2 years ago, I was a janitor. My biggest worries were clogged toilets, spilled milk, and students sneaking cigarettes behind the gym. I clocked in, mopped the floors, ate lunch in the boiler room with a paperback and a thermos of bad coffee. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't trained for anything that came after. Then came the outbreak. They said it was a rabies mutation, airborne, fast-moving, neurological. The first cases popped up in the Midwest. Within days, hospitals overflowed. By week 2, police stations were empty. By week 3, cities were burning. The infected don't die, they don't rot. They're not zombies, not really. Their hearts still beat. Their skin still sweats. But their minds are gone, replaced by something primal. A switch flipped in the brain, turning fear into fury, pain into silence, humanity into hunger. They don't stop, they don't sleep, they just run. And once they hear you, smell you, 'tis already too late. I lost my wife in the second wave. We were trying to get out of the city when traffic jammed up outside of Crestview Tunnel. She was dragging Eli by the arm, screaming for me to follow. Then someone fired a gun. Just one shot. That was all it took. They came pouring out of the trees. I saw her go down and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't even scream. I just grabbed Eli and ran. We made it to the only place that still felt familiar. Lincoln High, my old job. A fortress of brick and steel and locked doors. I knew every stairwell, every maintenance tunnel, every hidey hole built into its bones, and that night, I turned it into a tomb we could survive in. Over time, others came. Survivors who'd made it out of town, drifters from the outer burbs, a retired bus driver, a couple of teachers, a pregnant teenager and her little brother. Even a dog once, though he didn't last long. The group grew, but the rules stayed the same. No noise, no lights at night, no unnecessary movement. The infected hunt by sound and motion, and once they've got a scent, they don't stop. I've seen them smash through walls to reach someone crying on the other side. So we learned to be ghosts. We blacked out the windows, we cooked once a day, we whispered, we moved in shifts. I kept the old school generators running with scavenged parts. I rigged water filters out of lab supplies. The others called me Captain Jack like it was a joke, but they followed my lead. Because following me kept them alive. Eli, my boy, he adapted faster than anyone. Grew up hard, quiet, sharp. He learned how to read infected tracks in the mud, how to string alarms from soda cans and fishing wire. He never talked about his mother, but I knew it was there, just under the surface. We didn't have time to grieve. The world didn't leave space for that. Then the supplies started drying up. The school stockpile lasted us longer than we thought, But canned goods don't grow back, and rainwater only fills so many barrels. Batteries corroded, filters cracked, people got tired, thin and pale and quiet in ways that scared me more than the infected ever could. I told myself we'd last another week, then another. Then I heard Tasha whisper to one of the others, "We're already dead in here, just slower." Tasha used to be an EMT, tough, no nonsense. She saved lives with duct tape and whiskey. If she was giving up, I knew it was time. We scouted the warehouse months ago, an old shipping depot outside the industrial zone. Too far, too risky. We'd marked it red on the map and forgotten about it. But now it was the only place left that hadn't already been stripped clean. So I broke my own rule. I took Eli and Tasha, no one else. The fewer people, the quieter we could move. We packed light crowbars, rope, 2 pistols, 1 rifle with 6 bullets I never wanted to fire. The plan was simple: move fast, move silent, get what we could and haul it back. No one was supposed to die. No one was supposed to get separated. But I should have known better. Out here, planning is just another way to lie to yourself. The farther we got from Lincoln High, the quieter it got. Not peaceful quiet, not like the kind you get out in the woods before dawn. This was dead quiet, hollow, dry, watching you quiet. The kind that makes your teeth ache and your skin crawl, because every sound you do hear might be your last. Tasha led the way through the back roads, her eyes always scanning rooftops and windows. Eli flanked me on the right, a little too close, but I didn't push him away. Not this time. Not with how wrong everything felt in my gut. The warehouse came into view just after noon. It looked bigger than I remembered, an old shipping depot with a collapsed fence and busted loading docks, half swallowed by weeds and rust. The front gate hung crooked, swinging gently in the wind like it couldn't decide whether to let us in or keep us out. We approached on foot, no vehicles. Engines were death sentences. I raised my hand and we stopped 10 yards out. Something wasn't right. Boot prints, not ours, fresh, deep, heavy tread like military issue. Tasha crouched beside them and nodded. 2, maybe 3 people, not infected, armed judging by the spacing. She didn't say the next part. She didn't have to. Someone else had been here, maybe still was. We moved slow, careful, weapons drawn. My palms were slick with sweat. My heart was hammering, but I kept my breath even. We slipped around to the side loading dock and found our way in through a busted security door. Inside was shadow and dust. Empty racks loomed like gravestones, most shelves stripped clean. Scattered packaging told a story. People had already been here, picked through everything. Except Tasha crouched again near a row of overturned pallets. "Traps," she said, pointing a thin tripwire strung ankle height between rusted steel legs. "Homemade, recent." Eli stepped closer and tilted his head. "Drones." I looked up, confused. Then I saw it, a black plastic drone, half smashed, lodged in a ceiling beam. Burn marks on the wall nearby. Looked like someone had used it for recon or bait. "They were scouting for infected," I muttered. "And if they were setting traps, maybe they wanted to bring them." Tasha swore under her breath. Why the hell would anyone? A sound cut her off. Not loud, just a scrape. Low, wet, close. We all froze. From the far end of the warehouse, shadows moved. Dozens of them. Some crawling, some limping. Some standing perfectly still, heads twitching toward the noise like broken weather vanes. They weren't dead. They were sleeping. I hadn't seen it before, not like this. But I had heard stories infected that went still during the day, conserving energy like predators in the heat, waiting for movement, waiting for noise. We backed up slowly, step by step. Then Eli's foot hit a glass bottle. It clinked once, twice, rolled across the floor and struck a beam with a ping. Hell opened. The nearest infected's eyes snapped wide. Its head twitched. Then it shrieked, a raw, ragged sound that shredded the silence like a buzzsaw. The whole pack woke at once like someone had hit a switch. They were on us. I grabbed Eli and ran, yelling for Tasha. Split, west exit. We took the stairs two at a time, ducked under broken girders, crashed through piles of moldy cardboard. The infected poured behind us like water, tripping, snarling, crawling over one another with wild eyes and blood-slick mouths. We reached a stairwell and slammed the door behind us. Only then did I realize Tasha wasn't with us. Shit! Tasha! Eli pulled on my arm. She went the other way. I started back down, but he blocked me. 17 years old, and he stood like stone. Dad, she knew what she was doing. His voice cracked. Just once, but it held. We bolted up to the roof, kicked out a rusted vent panel, and dropped onto a lower access ladder. My shoulder nearly popped from the landing. Eli helped me up without a word. We didn't stop until we hit the tree line. Half a mile out, we finally paused behind a collapsed billboard. My lungs burned, my legs shook. Eli looked like he'd aged a year in just 5 minutes. I reached for the radio, static. Again and again, nothing. Then Tasha's voice, faint, cut with static. I led him south, safe for now. Don't come back. Repeat, don't. Then silence. I stared at the speaker like it might give me more. It didn't. I looked at Eli and he looked back. We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew. We'd left her behind. We made it to the ranger station just before dusk. Old fire lookout on the ridge, half-collapsed roof, door hanging on by a hinge. One of those places that still smelled like wood and oil and loneliness. I remembered seeing it on an old hiking map in the school library. Figured we'd have 5 minutes to breathe before moving again. We had 2. I was sorting through my bag, trying to see what food we had left, when the barrel of a rifle jabbed me in the back. Don't move, hands up, both of you. I did what he said. So did Eli. Men came out of the trees like ghosts. 5, maybe 6, all armed, all hard-eyed and sunburnt and twitchy. Military surplus gear, mismatched armor plates, old radios duct taped together. They moved like they'd done this before. Too smooth to be scavengers, too clean to be wanderers. One of them had Tasha's radio. Where did you get that? I asked before I could stop myself. The one in charge stepped forward, tall, pale, buzzcut going gray, voice like gravel and barbed wire. You tell me, he said. Your little stunt in that warehouse got people killed. I frowned. We didn't know you were there. Didn't you? He nodded toward the drone hanging off his belt. Because someone sure as hell drew the horde toward our camp the same day we spotted your footprints in the mud. I opened my mouth to argue, but Eli's hand on my arm stopped me. His grip was tight. Who are you? I asked. Name's Corwin, the man said. Used to command a logistics company in the Guard. Now I command what's left of civility. You're coming with us. They blindfolded us and marched us down the slope. I counted footsteps, turns, the crunch of pine needles under boots. Every little detail I could burn into my brain. I'd spent a career knowing every back hall of a school. This was no different. Places are puzzles. You just have to feel for the scenes. They took us to a bunker hidden in a ravine. Real deal, concrete walls, sandbags, cameras on swivel mounts. There was power, lights, a working gate, people. Maybe 30 in all, men, women, even a few kids, watching us like we had leprosy. They locked us in a storage room, gave us water but no answers. Eli sat with his back against the wall, knees drawn up, staring at nothing. I should have made her come with us, I muttered. She wouldn't have, he said. He was right. Tasha was the kind of person who'd rather burn than let someone else carry the match. A few hours later, Corwin came back. "Want to explain this?" he said, tossing a small radio onto the floor between us. It was ours, school issue, modified with shortwave components I'd rigged from an old science lab. We only had 3 of them. One was with us. Another was with Tasha. The third. I picked it up, turned it on. Static, then voices. "Breach on the east wing. Multiple down there inside." Another voice panicked. "Repeat, infected breach the main floor. Fire team is our school." Corwin leaned in. "Your home base got hit 2 hours ago. We intercepted the signal just after sunset." I stared at him. "You're lying. You think I want infected flooding through this valley? Every time someone lights a fire or fires a gun, it's like ringing a dinner bell. And people like you keep ringing." I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not with the sound of that last radio message looping in my head like a noose tightening. At dawn, I picked the lock with a paperclip from my pack and dragged Eli out with me. We slipped past 2 guards and into the brush before they knew we were gone. I don't know if Corwin let us go, or if we just got lucky. We ran the whole way back. It took us half a day. And when we saw the smoke curling over the tree line, I already knew. Lincoln High was broken. The front door was smashed in, barricades torn to splinters, blood smeared across locker doors, bullet holes in the walls. The generator room was burned out, my old workroom gone. We crept through the back entrance and called out, soft, desperate. A voice answered from under a pile of gym mats. 3 of them had survived: Jenna, the teacher, Marcus, the kid with asthma, and Hal, the old bus driver who'd somehow managed to weld a locker over the stairwell and hold out. They looked at me like ghosts, and I probably looked the same to them. We pulled them out, patched up what wounds we could. Then Marcus coughed. I turned just in time to see his eyes go bloodshot, foam at the mouth, seizure. He convulsed so hard his limbs cracked against the tile. I didn't think. I just grabbed the crowbar and... Afterward, no one said anything. Jenna just cried. Eli looked at me, jaw tight, hands shaking. And somewhere behind the silence, I heard the sound of another window breaking. We didn't have time to bury Marcus. Didn't have the strength either. I wrapped his body in an old banner that used to hang in the gym. "Go Wildcats!" and dragged him to the loading dock with Eli's help. The blood trail he left behind was thin but bright, like a fuse we already lit. We used what was left of the lockers and desks to reinforce the entrances, but it was nothing like before. This wasn't the same safe haven we'd carved out with sweat and scars. This place was already broken, haunted. Tasha was gone. Half the group was dead, and the ones who remained, Jenna, Hal, Eli, and me, were barely standing. And the infected were back. They came just after sunset, not dozens, hundreds. It wasn't a horde, it was a migration. Something had stirred them up. Maybe Corwin's people had flushed them out of the lower valley. Maybe a fire, maybe fate. Or maybe we had just lasted too long, and it was our turn. I stood at the second-floor window and watched the first wave pour across the football field, crawling, leaping, shrieking, some naked, some in scraps of rotting uniforms or torn parkas. Their eyes glowed in the moonlight like headlights caught in rain. "Dad," Eli said behind me, voice barely holding. I turned. He had his baseball bat in one hand and his makeshift flashlight in the other. It flickered, barely alive. "Go downstairs," I told him. "Help Jenna and Hal. Don't wait for me unless you have to." "You're coming with us this time," he said. "Promise me." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I could. The infected hit the outer wall like a tidal wave. We heard the crash from the cafeteria. The barricades didn't slow them. The fire doors lasted maybe 3 minutes. Then the screaming started. I met Hal in the hall outside the library, dragging an oxygen tank behind him like a war drum. "You got a plan?" he asked, sweat pouring down his leathery forehead. "Not a good one," I said. He grinned anyway. "That's the only kind left." We fought like we were already dead. Fire extinguishers to the face, mop handles sharpened to spears, a nail gun I'd rigged to run off a car battery. We used everything. Every room became a kill box. Every stairwell a last stand. Jenna took a bite to the arm before we could pull her back. She didn't scream, just looked down at the blood like it had betrayed her. We locked her in the nurse's office, gave her a knife, and said nothing. Eli held the north hallway, just him and the bat. He didn't even flinch when one of them burst through a locker to grab him, just swung and swung until the head was gone and the body stopped twitching. But it wasn't enough. We were being pushed floor by floor, room by room, cornered. I was about to call retreat when Eli pointed at the janitor's closet. "Dad, the tunnels." It took me a second to understand. Then I remembered. Back when this place still had pep rallies and detention slips, the school board funded a small emergency shelter beneath the East Wing, part of an old Cold War drill plan. Nobody used it, but the maintenance tunnels were still connected. I used to sneak down there to sleep off graveyard shifts. We bolted for the closet. The key was still taped under the top shelf, where I left it 20 years ago. We dragged Hal in behind us and slammed the door just as the infected filled the hallway like water behind glass. I led them through darkness and rust and mildew. The tunnels groaned around us like the building remembered what it used to be. Twice we had to crawl over collapsed pipes. Once I nearly fell into an open shaft. Hal slipped, tore open his leg. Eli carried him the rest of the way without a word. They followed us down. Not all of them, but enough. Their shrieks echoed in the metal like knives in a tin can. We reached the fork where the service line split. Left went to the generator, right to the shelter. We went right. The last 100 feet were a blur of screams and footsteps and gunshots. Hal passed out. Eli tripped and almost didn't get back up. I turned around, saw 3 infected sprinting through the tunnel, their limbs flailing, mouths wide with blood and hunger. I pulled my last flare, lit it, threw it. Red light filled the passage. Then I tackled the last steel hatch and yanked it open. Inside, I screamed. Eli dragged Hal through. I slammed the hatch shut just as the first infected slammed into it with a wet crunch. No lock, just a wheel. I spun it until my palms bled. Then silence. Thick, absolute. I dropped to the floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Eli sat across from me, holding Hal's hand. He looked at me and didn't say a word. But he didn't have to. We were alive. The shelter lights flickered once, then hummed to life. Old fluorescent tubes embedded in concrete ceilings, dim, yellowed with age, but working, just barely. It looked like a fallout bunker designed by people who never expected it to be used. 2 rooms. 1 steel table bolted to the ground, rows of rusted bunk beds, a wall of canned food from a time when Best Buy still meant something. Eli helped me prop Hal onto one of the beds. His leg was bad, deep, jagged tear from some broken pipe. Blood soaked the makeshift bandage. I tightened it, using what was left of a clean t-shirt. "I'll go through the med box," Eli said. He moved like he was holding his breath. I moved like I was underwater. The adrenaline had burned off, leaving behind every bruise, every ache. My arms felt like sandbags. My knees were jelly. I could barely lift the crowbar anymore. But I didn't let go of it. Not even when I sat down. Not even when I closed my eyes for a second. Just 1 second. Something slammed against the hatch. Hard. Eli froze mid-step. We both turned toward the sound. Another slam. And another. Metal screeched. Thought they couldn't figure out the wheel, Eli whispered. They usually can't, I muttered. We heard something scrape down the length of the steel like claws or tools. A new noise joined in. Grinding, slow and sharp. They were using something. Maybe from the workshop, maybe from the tunnels. Maybe they'd just gotten lucky and found leverage. Or maybe. They're learning, I said. The words came out like gravel. Eli looked at me like I'd said a curse. We didn't have much time. I took stock. The rations were mostly intact, crushed but edible. The shelter had water, thank God for gravity-fed systems. A small generator sat in the corner, half covered in dust, but it sputtered to life when I pulled the cord. Battery charge, 38%. Enough for maybe a night. But we weren't getting a night. The hatch shook again. The bolt whined under pressure. They get through that, we're boxed in, Eli said. No, I said. There's another way out. He blinked. I stood and limped to the far wall, where the concrete was stained with old water damage. I ran my hand along the seam, pried at a panel with the end of my crowbar until it popped loose. Behind it, darkness. A narrow shaft, a crawl space, barely wide enough to fit a grown man. Maintenance tunnel, secondary venting line, I said. I used to sneak out of here during long shifts, led up toward the old utility shed. You think it's still open? Don't know, I said, but it's not here. We loaded Hal into a canvas stretcher we made from tarp and broom handles. Eli took the front. I took the back. Every step made my ribs scream. The tunnel was tighter than I remembered. Every inch reeked of mold and rot and rust. But it was quiet. The banging faded behind us as we moved deeper, crawling, dragging, inching. Once we had to stop and push aside a nest of rats. Another time, Eli screamed when a pipe burst above us, showering us in decades-old condensation. But we kept going. The tunnel angled up, steeper, narrower. My shoulders scraped both walls. My knees were raw. Then light. Not daylight, not sun. Just the faint green glow of a chemical stick someone had left behind. Fresh. Not ours. I pulled Eli back. We crouched low. Whispers echoed up the shaft. Voices. Human. Then footsteps. Not infected, not dragging feet, boots. I tightened my grip on the crowbar, looked at Eli. He raised the bat. We rounded the last bend, and nearly collided with two men in body armor. They raised rifles, we raised weapons. Nobody fired. Wait, one of them barked. I froze, recognized the patch on his vest. Not military, not Corwin's crew. Who are you? I asked. The man looked just as confused. Scav team out of Harmon Ridge, he said. We're sweeping shelters for survivors. We tracked a heat spike here an hour ago. Through that, I nodded at the tunnel. He gave a grim smile. No choice, everything else down there's crawling. I looked at Eli, then at Hal, barely conscious, bleeding out, clinging to life. And I made the call. You get us topside, I said, and I'll tell you everything I know about Corwin, about the infected, about what's coming. The man nodded. He raised his radio, called in a medivac. And just like that, we were moving again. Climbing out of the dark. Not to safety, but to something else. I didn't remember getting out of the tunnels. 1 minute I was in that cramped space, breathing in dust. The next, I'm blinking up at a low ceiling, my head aching, wrapped in a thermal blanket that smelled faintly of antiseptic and mothballs. A woman in a tactical vest hovered over me, a syringe in hand. "Don't move," she said. "You lost a lot of blood. You're stable for now." I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. Everything felt like it was made of stone. "Where's Eli?" I rasped. She nodded toward the far corner. Eli was sitting cross-legged by a space heater, talking with a couple of scavengers. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, but he was alive. He gave me a small nod when he saw me, a relief, a promise. Then I saw Hal. He was laid out on a cot unconscious with a drip attached to his arm. His leg was wrapped tight, elevated, and he was still breathing. We were in a new shelter, cleaner than I remembered, with supplies scattered in neat rows. It didn't look like much, but it was enough. It was safe. After a few hours of rest, the scavengers gave us water, food, and bandages. They asked questions: who we were, what happened, if we knew anything about the valley's infected clusters. I answered what I could, but I was too exhausted to care much. Hal was stable but out of it, and Eli, well, he wasn't asking to leave. Not yet. The place was quiet for the first time in weeks. I leaned back, staring at the old map of shelters taped to the wall, some marked as unknown, others still open, but I could see from the marks on the map that most of them had gone dark. We weren't out of the woods yet. Eli moved closer, holding out a protein bar. "What now?" he asked, his voice quiet, hopeful. I stared at the map, my eyes tracing the routes. The answer was there, somewhere in the shadows of those unmarked paths. "There's still more out there," I said. "We find it." Eli nodded, glancing at the door. I could see it in his eyes, the same hunger, the same drive. He wasn't done yet. Neither was I. The tunnel maps haunted me. Late at night, when the heaters kicked off and the shelter sank into silence, I'd find myself staring at those faded lines. So many paths, so many dead ends. And maybe, just maybe, a few still led somewhere. Tasha's voice echoed in my head more than it should have. She used to say hope was a luxury, but if you didn't have it, you stopped moving. You stopped fighting. You stopped trying. I'm not ready to stop. We've got supplies for a week, maybe two. Hal's stable. Eli's itching to move. He wants to find others, wants to fix things. He's still young enough to believe the world's not done with us. Me, I don't know. I've seen what's out there. I buried enough to know better. But I also know this: when you find even a sliver of something worth saving, you hold on with both hands. Because the minute you let go, the dark remembers your name, and it comes looking. We're heading out in the morning. One last supply run. Maybe this time it'll lead to something more.